There's a quote that says, "Comparison is the thief of all joy." Now, it's bad enough when we compare ourselves against others, but it can be even worse when others stack us up against someone else, especially someone within our family. In today's video, I am going to discuss pretty privilege within a family dynamic. Let's get into it. Hi, my name is Tammy and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to part 2 of the worst places to have pretty privilege inside of a family dynamic. Now, whether it be between mother and daughter, cousins, or sisters, having pretty privilege within your family can be one of the most painful things you see or experience because it causes sadness, division, and favoritism. So to break down the way pretty privilege works inside of a family dynamic, let's use two sisters for example, but not any two sisters, twins, the Olsen twins. We were first introduced to Mary-Kate and Ashley when they portrayed Michelle Tanner on Full House. Now, although Mary-Kate and Ashley look identical, they are actually fraternal twins. And they actually have a lot of differences. For example, Mary-Kate is right-handed, Ashley is left-handed. And Ashley is taller than Mary-Kate by 1 inch, and they both have freckles in different places. Now, anytime there's two of anything, there will always be a comparison, which is fine because although these women are twins, they are still individuals. But it turns negative when people start comparing their looks, especially when they start saying things like, one twin is prettier than the other one. Now, this is how you know that pretty privilege is a real thing, because even with twins who look 99% identical, people will still find it in their minds to decide which one they think is prettier. So as the twins grew up into adults, we started to notice, or at least according to the media, that Mary-Kate was more of the tomboy or the sporty one, and that Ashley was more of the girly type. Mary-Kate also wore her hair in more darker tones, and Ashley wore her hair in more lighter and more blonder tones. So from here, people started categorizing Mary-Kate as the less desirable twin and Ashley as the pretty twin. And I remember this point in time because they were doing a lot of interviews, a lot of red carpets, and people were starting to notice that their styles and that their personalities were different. And people in blogs were very harsh to Mary-Kate, saying things like she looks frail and she doesn't smile in her pictures, and a lot of other not so nice things, basically insinuating and blatantly saying that Ashley is the better looking or more relatable twin. The media seemed more interested in Ashley and talked about her in a more positive light than Mary-Kate. Now just imagine what this can do to someone's psyche. Just imagine what this does to sisters. Just imagine what this does to twins. Knowing that I have the exact same face as someone else, but I am being called out and categorized as the less favorable one. Just imagine how Mary-Kate felt and imagine how Ashley felt, being called the pretty one, which is a compliment that she could not enjoy because it came at the expense of her sister. Imagine the sadness that both sisters felt, probably in different ways. And of course, because of this, Mary-Kate was looked at and treated differently than Ashley. And if I recall correctly, because of the scrutiny from the media, is one of the reasons they decided to become very low-key and keep a low profile on social media. So this is just one example of how pretty privilege can affect a family dynamic. Another example of why one sister may receive pretty privilege over the other one is due to her skin tone. Sometimes, especially in the African American community, the light-skinned or the lighter toned sister may receive preferential treatment over the other. Of course, this comes from deeply rooted issues in the Black community, such as racism and colorism. The mother may feel that her light-skinned daughter will have an easier route or make her life easier in some ways, so she showers that child with more love and positive attention. And of course, this may have been taught to this mother by her mother, and so forth. This leads to the darker toned sister feeling inadequate, having low self-esteem, having self-hatred, and resentment towards lighter skinned women. Now, another example I have seen is within the mother and daughter dynamic when the mother is jealous of her daughter's pretty privilege. Now this one is real tricky and unfortunate, but I have seen it. This one usually happens when the mother used to have pretty privilege herself when she was younger, but she is now older and maybe not as attractive as she used to be. And she didn't get to fulfill all the things and goals that she wanted to fulfill in her life. And she has a lot of resentment about it because she feels shortchanged. But instead of coming to terms with it or choosing to still reach for her goals, she counts herself out and becomes very bitter. And then when she has a younger daughter who is beautiful, full of life, full of promise, who is going for and reaching her goals and her dreams, and is validated in a lot of ways that she wasn't validated, the mother then begins to project that bitterness onto her daughter. And of course, this causes divide. Now, when you see this type of situation, the hope is that these mothers will heal and go on to support their daughters, but in some cases, these mothers become very controlling and sometimes live overly vicariously through their daughters. And unfortunately, some of these situations can be so bad that the mothers start to mistreat their daughters, eventually causing that daughter to self-sabotage herself or separate herself and go on to live a happy and fulfilling life. And unfortunately, sometimes you gotta love people from afar. And in extreme cases, the mother may even get with her other children or other members of her family and ban against her daughter. Now, pretty privilege is heavily correlated with favoritism. Favoritism is the practice of giving unfair preferential treatment to one person or group at the expense of another. And anytime favoritism is involved, it can cause division, dissension, and unhealthy competition. And it can also cause low self-esteem for the person that doesn't have the favor. This is even biblical. Remember Cain and Abel from the Bible? Cain and Abel were the first two sons of Adam and Eve. Both Cain and Abel were to present God with sacrifices. Abel's offering was accepted and Cain's offering was rejected. Cain started to feel like Abel was God's favorite and became jealous of his relationship with God and his faith. He became so envious of his brother that he eventually took him out. Also, even in movies, we see how favoritism can ruin a family dynamic. Remember the classic movie, Boys in the Hood? Well, this movie centers around two brothers growing up in Crenshaw who are opposite of each other, but they had a lot of love for each other. The movie deals with a lot of sadness and tragedy, but perhaps the most tragic thing that occurred in this movie was the favoritism shown by the mother of these two brothers. So Ricky, played by Morris Chestnut, was labeled the good son, the promising son, and the more handsome one. He was a football player with high hopes of getting a scholarship to go to a university. And Doughboy, played by Ice Cube, was labeled the troubled son, the one who dabbled in the streets and in criminal activity. There was no expectation placed on him to achieve greatness. This played out by how the mother treats and responds to each brother. In the movie, you see the mother give Ricky a lot of positive attention. She praises him and she encourages him, but she often scolded and ignored Doughboy. She even often blamed Doughboy for any and everything that went wrong, and Ricky could do no wrong. Even when there was any kind of trouble in the neighborhood involving the boys, she would always run to Ricky's side to make sure that he was okay. But instead of checking on Doughboy to see if he was okay too, she would just blame him and she ignored his pain. Now, if you haven't seen the movie, spoiler alert, it does end in tragedy. And when Ricky is taken out by a drive-by, she even blames Doughboy for that. And because of this element, that movie is very hard for me to watch because all I could focus on was how bad her parenting was and how much pain I felt for Doughboy. He was literally dismissed and invisible, and their fathers were not in the picture, so just having one parent there, but then having that parent there that doesn't even acknowledge you or acknowledge your pain can be even worse. Although Doughboy was supposed to be the tough one, you could just see the pain on his face when the mother showed favoritism. And maybe, just maybe, if she had shown him some positive attention and loved him and poured into him just as much as she poured into Ricky, maybe Doughboy wouldn't have been in the streets. And if he did go to the streets, maybe her love would have been enough to pull him back. But the most tragic thing was he never thought that he would be good enough and not as good as his brother. And he believed that. And because of that belief, he never even tried. What we have to be careful with when it comes to this particular situation, pretty privilege inside of a family dynamic, we have to be very careful about limiting beliefs and what people speak over us and what we believe in, what we allow in our psyche, and what we allow in our hearts. We have to be very careful with words and other people projecting their negativity or their beliefs onto us. If your dream is to be a public speaker, but maybe you have a stuttering problem, maybe you talk too fast, maybe you talk too slow. I know for me once, I used to talk very, 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 very fast. Got to a point where I had to literally concentrate and make myself slow down. And then at one point I began talking very, very, very slow because I wanted people to hear and understand what I said. But it kind of created a complex in my head for a very long time to where I didn't know how to speak in front of people, and I was very self-conscious about it. So say, for example, you have a dream of being a public speaker and someone tells you you'll never amount to that. You're not the speaking type. That's not for you, or I don't think you would be good at that. We have to recognize and separate that is that person's opinion, that person's belief, that person's problem. That has nothing to do with you. If you want to be a public speaker, go be a public speaker. You don't have to let someone else's belief bleed into your mind and into your heart. And that's the thing with pretty privilege inside of these family dynamics. Someone tells one sister she's not the pretty sister, and before she knows it, she starts to manifest that by lowering her head or acting smaller or feeling self-conscious around people or being in her sister's shadow or not speaking up or speaking out for herself because she was told, hey, you're not the pretty one, go be invisible, let her have all the shine. We have to be very careful about what we believe. There's a book called The Four Agreements, and it talks about words and how they cast spells. But the spell can only be cast if you believe it. So people can say whatever they want to say about you. They can say whatever negative thing they want to say. But it's when you believe that negativity or you believe that thing that was said about you that the spell gets actually cast. So don't allow other people to speak negatively on you, and if they do, don't believe it. Believe in yourself and pursue and be whatever you want to be. Now, this is definitely a bigger conversation, and a lot of families have been hurt or are still dealing with this particular topic within inside of their family. So we see how dangerous pretty privilege can be inside of a family, and we see how it can lead to things like skepticism and low self-esteem and also favoritism. And we also see how it can cause division even between two people that love and care for each other. So what are your thoughts about pretty privilege and family dynamics, and what are your thoughts about favoritism? Please leave your thoughts and comments below in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in part 3.